Welcome back, everybody. This is the first batch of parts, and they just got sandblasted. So what I'm going to do now is, you see I've got my rubber gloves on. There's a little bit of white powder. I usually sprinkle a little baby powder inside my gloves just to make them go on a little bit better. So now I'm going to blow these parts off. As soon as I get them blown off, I'll hang them on my rack, and they will be ready for Cerakote. So this may get a little noisy, compressor may kick on, so I hope you can hear what I'm saying. And here we go. I just turned on my exhaust fan to blow the sand out. And I'm going to take each part, and I'll usually set it on a paper towel or something right here, just to get the big stuff off first. And then I'll set them over on this paper towel over here to the side. And now I try to dump out any sand. This is where I stack them once I've sandblasted them in the actual. This is just the little part that I make when I'm hanging certain parts. I use like a 332 brazen rod, and I'll just bend it, and this is what I'll hang it on in the oven, and I'll hold it also when I'm spraying it. And some of those it's easier to sandblast without the hanger. You want to make sure you blow the hanger off also. Now, a lot of times when I get to these, this is how I hang my screws, or how I rack them for the oven. So I'll take all these that have these little hooks on them, and I'll spray these all at once, or I'm sorry, not spray, but blast them with air all at once. It's because I want to clean off the hooks. Will get powder residue from your grit sandblasted on these, and you want to make sure that you blow those off. Now this one, you see, this is one that that one goes to this part here, and it's just hard to hold like that in the oven. I'll just hook this one back up. And these, I just make these. They're easy to make. And this one you can see is missing one, which I know what part that is. It should be the trap door or the bottom plate for the magazine. If you don't clean off this hook, you do risk powder dropping on that when you have wet Cerakote. So that should be all. Now I'm going to hang all these on my wire. You may not can see it. I'm going to take this and dump this back into the sandblast cabinet. I'm going to reposition the camera to the wire rack that I have, and see if I can show you. Okay, I've repositioned the camera so you can see where I hang these, and this is just, I guess, depending on what kind of wire you call it, I just call it baling wire. You can get it at most of your hardware stores, and I just got it hooked to the walls on either side, and I keep it tensioned with a turnbuckle, and I just tighten it. But this is how I hang my parts just prior to spraying them. If I don't have, and this type here needs these hooks, so I made those hooks to go there. And if I'm only doing a couple of parts, I'm going to just leave them on my table or my bench. And just use that instead. I've got one tangled up there. Okay, there you should be able to see all my parts. Now I'm ready to paint the Cerakote, or spray the Cerakote. So what I'll do at this point, I'm going to stop the camera for a minute. We'll reposition it and try to get it where you can see me spraying the Cerakote. So just stand by for a minute. Okay, we got our prison pink Cerakote. I've already shaken up some. I'm going to finish shaking it up. You just want to make sure that it's shaken real well, and what I'm going to be mixing is 30 mils of this, and my preference for mixing is 15 to 1. So you have this graduated cylinder. I like the glass ones, and well, you know what, I'm going to mix 45. And that should cover all the parts. I'd rather have a little bit extra than not enough. So that is 45 mils, and this is the hardener. So I'm going to add 3 mils of the hardener. Okay, over here you'll see this is my little homemade mixer. It's just a sewing machine motor. I put in a little rheostat. This is a little boat propeller from a model boat, and it's glued on there with super glue or something, I can't remember. So I'm just going to stick it in there, and I'll use this and I'll get it going. So I'll get a speed that I'm comfortable with, and I'll just start moving it up and down. And if I need to go off the side, now that happens sometimes. It's just held up there by a little rubber hose and a zip tie. Now that should be good. And I'm going to put my gun together. Last time I sprayed, I just left it apart, which sometimes I do that, but you also risk losing parts. Now this is the gun I use. It is it's the Iwata. I believe it's the .08 or .8 tip. Just to give you an example, I've been using this same gun for 8 years now. It's about $350, but it will last you. It will spray good. This one does need a rebuild kit because it does leak a little around here when I'm spraying. And how I combat that is I take one of my shop towels and I'll tear a piece off and I'll fold it a couple times, and then I'll put it right here and just wrap it around the trigger. It doesn't cause any problems. It just keeps me from getting Cerakote on my hands, and that's it, because it needs a new lid, but it works. It still works fine. Now, when this is all the way closed, the number 1 is on the 12 o'clock position or in that area. And so I usually back it out 1 full turn for my fluid. And this, I'll just crack it because I don't want a big fan unless I'm doing a big part. So this is ready to spray. So I'm going to put that here, and I'm just going to hang this on my rack after I pick up my lid. Because what I like to do, and I don't know, you probably can't see that fully, is I want to make sure that I put some acetone in this little beaker. That one's empty. Let me get another one. Because I find that if you do this now, it just makes the cleanup easier later. And if I have a spill on the outside, I'll do it, and then I'll just let that sit. And this is what I use mostly. It's just a little, you can get these off of Amazon or eBay or anything like that. But make sure when you're done using it, crack the lid just a little bit. Because what will happen is, like this one that's empty but a little bit at the bottom, the lid was left tight. So air pressure builds up and it'll empty it for you. So we are ready to spray. I'm going to change camera position, and then we'll shoot some footage of us actual spraying. Okay, I am ready to spray. Now, already told you what gun I use. It's the eye water. You can pick this up at Cerakote.com. They do sell this, and that's where I recommend you go. I am not sponsored by them, but that's just they're really good people to work with. Now I've got my volume or my fluid opening set. I've got my fan adjusted to where I want it. I set my my air compressor at 20 psi, and that usually does the trick. And what you want to do is you just want to do one good pass until you can see that, you know, it wets out. But with pink, you may have to do more than one pass. Just from my experience, pink is hard to spray. So we're going to get started. And I just, you know, hold it. I'll check and see what's coming out and how it's coming out. And when you got parts on hangers like this, they want to move on you sometimes. So that's just one of the little things you have to overcome. And there it is. Now this is the back side, so I'm going to put it on the back, hang it back on the rack. Now when I usually first hang them, I don't worry too much about separation, but when I hang them after they're coated, I want them separated so I don't touch them when I go to the oven. There goes the compressor. Okay, now maybe the camera's not shaking. And I just wanted to show you this. You can see these little alligator clips that I use. I just solder them onto this welding rod, and I typically will hold the screw from the end instead of 90 degrees like that. But it depends on how wore out the teeth are, because they will wear out from using them and sandblasting and all that. And the main thing I'm concerned here with is the surface. Is I want the good coverage on the surface. I will get coverage on the threads, but there's going to be a small area where there won't be, and that's just the nature of this clip. But it is on the inside, and in most cases it's not going to be an issue, because whatever the screw goes to on the firearm, it could be an internal part that gets greased, the threads get greased. It could be that it gets a little bit of Loctite and it's sealed. It could get never seized. Now the threads I'll spray from both sides, and I don't want to spray them too heavy. Even though Cerakote does go on very, very thin, and it can help it can actually help tighten up threads. That doesn't mean you necessarily always want to do that. So now this one, I'll hold this one, I'll put my finger here on the end and just put a little on the inside, and I'll work this one straight up and down. Now this one I may open my fan just a little bit more, but because it is a round piece, and what you may want to do if you're doing a piece like this, or it's a barrel or a hand guard, do what I call a half lap. And what you want to do is you want to do your fan, and then you'll step over about 50%. Now this piece is not real critical, and it's not going to be real tight because it's just a buffer tube, and they're not real high tolerance fit. Now, when I have a part like this, even though it has a hanger, I'll spray this in first. And I try to spray that in because that way I can hold on to this without the hanger. And I have a better chance of getting the bottom. Because when you hold it like that, it's hard to see everything in here. So that's typically how I do these. And it's just, you know, if you've never done Cerakote before, you'll eventually come up with your own little tricks. And something just dawned on me that this is supposed to be purple. So now these I call the trapdoor. These are a pain in the butt. From the factory, they've got oil inside here. They need to be baked out. That oil needs to be baked out before you sandblast and even after you sandblast. And sometimes I'll even come back with acetone. And also depress this button right here while you're blowing the grit off of it, to make sure that it's not frozen. Now I'm going to close my fan back down a little bit. Now you will see on some of these, if they're not cleaned out real well, the edges of this where that piece pops in, grease and oil will come out of there without a doubt. I think this is my last screw, and then I've got a little end plate where the buffer tube goes on. These are kind of notorious to be hard to hold and hard to paint. And actually this little device right here lets me get to all sides, and I'm just going to double check this one. Because when you have like a little S hook or something on this one, it'll blow all over the place. Now this is the last part. You can see I've got this little hook up here. I hope you can see it. This little hook goes to the ceiling, and it has a little swivel on it so I can swivel it. And some parts, barrels especially, it's a little bit easier to paint parts like this. And you know, sometimes if you want, you can actually make this a little bit lower, just whatever your preference is. Now I'm going to go ahead and crack my fan a little bit open. And the only reason I'm going twice over this is because these little indentations, these little depressed marks, you can't always get them from one side. You have to spray from multiple sides to get a good coverage on it. Now that's the last of my parts. I'm just going to hang my gun up. I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the oven. Then I have something I want to tell you. So what I want to tell you, and then I'm going to just go ahead and load my parts, is you noticed I wasn't wearing a respirator. You should always wear a respirator, but that's up to you. That's your safety issue. I am spraying in a small area, and from where I spray, I can touch my fan. My fan is on, and I am spraying directly. If I had a lot of mist in the air, I would definitely have a respirator on. So that's just a little safety feature. So I'm going to stop this little video episode right here. Get my parts in the oven. When they come out of the oven, we'll show a little section of the parts, what they look like after they've been cured, because they do look shiny when they're wet. And one of the things that I like to do also is, on the pink especially, is I'll let it sit for a few minutes, and the gloss will start to go away. And then as it sits, I'll look for any spots, and if it needs a little touch up, because pink is a little difficult to spray. So stay tuned, and we'll see you on the next video.